Welcome to PlaySkript. PlaySkript is a programming platform for creating visual content such as presentations, data visualization, or even interactive games. You can get started right away by clicking on the Start Coding link at the top of the startup page. But in order to experience the full power of the platform, it is best if you first create a free account. In this case, I already have an account, so I am going to log in. And once I do, I will be able to see all my recently created projects to the right, as well as projects that I have published for others to see to the left. In order to show you the different features of PlaySkript, we will start a new project with a simple physics demonstration. We can start the project here by clicking in this link, and this takes us to the coding page. Now, the first step is to give our project a name. So we can call it Physics is Fun. Once we do this, we can actually save the project, and now we can actually see it as one of our files that is available to view, as well as from the home screen. We can now see our project called Physics is Fun. So now let us add some content to our project. This is the resources window. This window contains images and shapes that you can add into your project. So first, we are going to add a simple heading. So we can drag the text into the project, and you can see that here we now see the code to write exactly that text. So we can modify the code to say exactly what we want it to say. Now, we are going to draw a circle to act as a ball for our little physics demonstration. So we can drag the circle into the canvas, and right away we get here the code for the ball. Now, we can see here that this is a little bit big for a ball. So we can actually use the live edit functionality in order to make it smaller. So by clicking here, we are now able to change the size, for example, or the initial position of this ball. And once we do it, we can now see that the code has been modified to reflect the new dimensions of our ball. So, for example, if we make it all the way down to 0.5, now we have a smaller ball in this position. Now, let's do something a little bit more fun. We want to make it so that when we click on the screen, the ball will move like a projectile with an initial velocity, x and y. So we are going to write here an initial velocity, vx, let's say equals 1, and vy equals -2. Notice that the coordinates here start with 0 at the top and grow bigger as we go down in the y and bigger as we go to the right in the x direction. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tell it that when you click, we are going to iterate for I between 0 and, let's say, 40. And we are going to ask the system to take this shape, let's call it ball, and then we're going to tell it to move the ball. How much is it going to move the ball? Well, we are going to move it by a vector that is vx and vy, and then we are going to change the y velocity by 0.1. And so what happens is that now, when we click, we see that the ball moves. Now, if we want the ball to move a little bit more slowly, we can also tell it to wait just a few milliseconds, let's say 50 milliseconds between one step and the next. And so we can see that now the ball is moving a little bit more slowly. We can even, at this point, for example, get the x-coordinate of the ball and the y-coordinate of the ball. And from those two coordinates, we can now tell it that we want to draw a line. And in this case, I'm just asking it to draw a line from the x and the y position of the ball. And this line is going to have a height equal to Vy and a width equal to Vx. And so now we see that as the ball moves, it's also drawing a line along its path. So what we have here now is just in very few lines of code, a simple program that visualizes a projectile being launched with a particular velocity. We can also add scenes to a project by simply using the scene separation operator. So in this case, we tell it that now there's going to be a new scene, and we can just call it scene number 2. So we can actually refresh here, and it shows us that there is an initial scene called physics is fun, and then a second scene that right now does not have any content. For this scene, I am going to show you one of the most powerful features of PlaySkript, which is the ability to import functionality from other projects. So the way we do that is that we go here to the import window, and we can actually browse for different projects that we may want to import. So for example, I have a project here that allows me to draw a really simple pyramid with text. It's not much, but it will illustrate what we can do. So let's just call it PY. So now when we do this, we see that we have this project that we have imported. It's the PY project, and this project imports some functions. So now we can call this pyramid function, and there's some documentation here that tells us that the text is going to be a list of all the text in the pyramid. We can give it positions, x and y, as well as height and width parameters and style parameters for our pyramid. So let's use it. We can actually tell it, for example, that here we want, out of the PY project that we imported, we want to call the pyramid function. And we are going to pass it some text. So for example, we can say that in the first level, it's going to say fun. In the second level, it's going to say width. And in the third level, it's going to say physics. And initially, it's going to be, let's just make up some coordinates, 10 and 10. And let's give it some parameters. For example, we can tell it that we are going to have parameters, let's say 7 and 7. We can always change them. We can also give it some formatting parameters. So for example, for the shape style, we can give it things like the color, and we can tell it that we want the color to be black, or the border color, and we can tell it that we want the border to be red. And then we can also give it parameters for the text. For example, we can tell it that the text should be 0.5 of the height of every level in the pyramid. And we can tell it, for example, that we want it to be light blue. So what happens when we do this? So right now we are in scene 1, and this is what happens. And if we go to scene number 2, we can see our pyramid. Notice that we can also use the live edit functionality to move this pyramid around, change its position that was given by these coordinates that we passed to the library. And now we have the pyramid in a different place. And in fact, here, if we refresh, we can now see that we have 2 different scenes. We can also write code in scene 1 to tell it, for example, that when the user presses the key right, then we want to move to the next scene. And we can tell it that when we give it the key left in scene 2, we want to go to the previous scene. And so now what we have is that we can click on this. We can also shift right to go to the next scene. We can shift left to go to the previous scene. And so now what we have here is our very first PlaySkript project. Once we are happy with our project, we can actually publish it by clicking here on the Publish button. And we have a choice between publishing it as a public project that is going to now be indexed and visible to everyone who visits the PlaySkript website, or we can generate a private link so that we can decide who we share this project with. And so after the project is shared with this private link, we can actually then use this link to either send to our friends or just to view it ourselves. So if we go back home, we can now see that this project has been published and it can be viewed by anyone who has this link. And again, you can either launch our ball or you can use the arrows to move from one scene to the other. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea of the kind of things that you can build with PlaySkript. There are many libraries available already that allow you to do things like create slide presentations, create plots, create bar graphs, and even create your own games. For example, here we have a library that can actually be used to create simple platformer games. So we hope you enjoy PlaySkript, and we hope you will use it to create your own projects, whether it's for work or for fun.